Sadie, we're done.
Ben, please.
This house, it's mine now.
I warned her. Step foot in Daniel's house, and we're done. The coffee maker gurgled to life as I replayed those exact words in my head, watching steam curl up from my mug like smoke from a funeral pyre. 3 months ago, I'd said it plain as day to my wife Saddie, standing right here in our kitchen, her new perfume thick in the air between us. Not the vanilla stuff she'd worn for years, but something expensive and cloying that made my stomach turn. "You're being paranoid, Ben," she'd laughed, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. "Daniel's just a friend from work." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Friend. Right. Friends don't buy each other designer handbags. Friends don't text at midnight with winky faces. And friends sure as hell don't make my wife of 8 years suddenly start caring about her appearance again after months of sweatpants and messy buns. I'm Ben Foster, 38 years old, former mechanical engineer turned real estate investor. I fix problems for a living now. Buy broken properties, make them whole, sell them for profit. It's methodical work that requires patience, planning, and the ability to see potential where others see disaster. Skills that serve a man well in all areas of life. The house around me reflected that philosophy. I'd bought this place 6 years ago as a foreclosure disaster and transformed it into something worthy of the neighborhood. Hardwood floors I'd refinished myself. Crown molding I'd installed during countless weekends. A kitchen renovation that took 9 months but increased the home's value by $40,000. Every room told the story of careful investment and patient improvement. Saddie used to appreciate that about me. Used to brag to her pharmaceutical sales colleagues about her handy husband who could fix anything. But somewhere along the line, my steady reliability became boring predictability. My careful planning became controlling behavior. My devotion became suffocation. Enter Daniel Ingram, 34 years old, luxury car salesman at the BMW dealership downtown. All flash and no substance, the kind of guy who wore expensive suits to hide cheap character. I'd done my research, naturally. Daniel lived in his parents' old house on Maple Street, a classic colonial they'd signed over to him after his messy divorce 2 years ago. His ex-wife Bree had taken him for half his assets, which wasn't much since he spent every dime he made on maintaining his image. But Saddie didn't know that. All she saw was the charm, the expensive dinners, the promises whispered in hotel rooms she thought I didn't know about. I knew about all of them. The Marriott downtown on Tuesday afternoons, the little bed and breakfast outside town where they went last weekend while I was supposedly at a property inspection. The intimate text messages planning their next rendezvous, complete with explicit details that made my hands shake with rage when I discovered them on the phone bill. My phone buzzed. Saddie's contact photo, a smiling picture from our anniversary dinner last year, lit up the screen. "Working late again tonight, don't wait up." I typed back, "Sure thing. Drive safe." But I knew she wouldn't be working. Tonight was Daniel's housewarming party, the one she'd been talking about for weeks, the one she'd specifically invited herself to after I'd made my position crystal clear. Step foot in his house and we're done. She thought I was bluffing. Thought good old reliable Ben would just swallow his pride and pretend everything was fine, the way I'd been doing for months. Thought I'd keep playing the fool while she and her boyfriend laughed at the stupid husband behind his back. My hands were shaking, but not with fear. I walked to my home office, past the framed photos of our wedding day, past the vacation pictures from happier times, past all the evidence of a life I'd built with someone who'd decided I wasn't worth keeping. My computer hummed to life, and I opened the folder I'd been building for weeks. Financial records, property assessments, legal documents, phone records, credit card statements, hotel receipts, and one very interesting piece of information I'd discovered just yesterday during a routine property search: Daniel's house wasn't actually his. Not legally. His parents, Robert and Margaret Ingram, still held the deed. Daniel was essentially a tenant in his own childhood home, paying them a nominal rent while they figured out their retirement plans. I picked up my phone and dialed a familiar number. "Marty, it's Ben. I need a favor. How fast can I buy a house if I pay cash?" My old college buddy and current real estate attorney chuckled. "Depends on the situation." "Why, you flipping another property?" "Something like that." "Well, if all the paperwork's in order and the sellers are motivated, we could close in a week, maybe less if there's no financing involved." "What's the rush?" I stared at the photo on my desk. Saddie and me at the beach last summer, her head on my shoulder, both of us genuinely happy. Or so I'd thought. Let's just say I found the perfect investment opportunity, the kind that only comes around once in a lifetime. "Okay, mysterious. Send me the details and I'll take a look. I'll have them to you tomorrow morning. And Marty, this one needs to stay between us." Attorney-client privilege, buddy. Your secrets are safe with me. I hung up and opened a new browser window, typing in an address I'd memorized. 247 Maple Street. The house where my wife would be tonight, celebrating with her lover, probably laughing about how easy it was to fool the boring husband. The property listing popped up, not for sale, but the tax records were public. Assessed value, $185,000. Recent improvements, minimal. Owners, Robert and Margaret Ingram, ages 67 and 64. Perfect. I spent the next hour researching everything I could find about Daniel's parents. Robert was a retired insurance adjuster, Margaret a former elementary school teacher. They'd bought the house in 1982, raised 3 children there, and had been talking about downsizing since Robert's retirement last year. They attended St. Mark's Episcopal Church, donated to local charities, and by all accounts were decent, traditional people who valued honesty and integrity. The kind of people who would be horrified to learn their son was destroying someone else's marriage. My phone buzzed with another text from Saddie. "Party's amazing. Daniel's such a good host. Wish you were here." I typed back, "Having a great time at home. Enjoy yourself." Then I opened my laptop and began printing documents. Bank statements showing my available cash, investment portfolio summaries, letters of recommendation from previous property deals, and most importantly, a detailed timeline of Saddie and Daniel's affair, complete with receipts, photos, and phone records. By the time I finished, it was past midnight. Saddie's car wasn't in the driveway. She was probably spending the night at Daniel's, in the bed that would soon belong to me. I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my leather chair, looking out at the neighborhood I'd come to love. Tree-lined streets, well-maintained homes, families who still believed in commitment and keeping promises. Saddie had fit in here once, back when she was the woman I'd married, instead of the stranger she'd become. Tomorrow, I would make some calls, set up some meetings, begin the process of teaching 2 very important lessons. First, that actions have consequences, and second, that underestimating Ben Foster was the biggest mistake anyone could make. I raised my glass to the empty house. Step foot in his house and we're done, Saddie. I meant every word. The next morning, I was dressed and caffeinated by 7 a.m., sitting in my truck outside St. Mark's Episcopal Church. Sunday service wouldn't start for another hour, but I knew from my research that Robert and Margaret Ingram arrived early to help with setup. Margaret ran the church's food pantry program, and Robert counted the collection money. Good people, salt-of-the-earth types who'd raised their children to respect marriage and family values. The kind of parents who would be devastated to learn their son was actively destroying both. At 7:30, a silver Honda Civic pulled into the church parking lot. I recognized them immediately from their Facebook photos. Robert, tall and distinguished with silver hair. Margaret, petite and energetic with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. They looked like the sort of couple who'd been married for 40 years and still held hands during movies. I waited until they'd unloaded several boxes of canned goods from their trunk before approaching. "Mr. and Mrs. Ingram, I'm Ben Foster. I was wondering if I could speak with you for a moment." Robert straightened, immediately wary. "Do we know you, son?" "No, sir, but I believe you know my wife. Saddie Foster. She works in pharmaceutical sales, drives a red Honda. She's been spending quite a bit of time at your son Daniel's house lately." Margaret's face lit up with recognition. "Oh, yes. Daniel mentioned he'd been dating someone new. Saddie seems lovely from what he's told us." My stomach clenched, but I kept my expression neutral. "That's actually what I wanted to discuss with you. I have some information I think you should see, and a business proposition that might interest you." Robert's eyes narrowed. "What kind of business proposition?" I pulled out a manila folder from my truck. "I'm a real estate investor, Mr. Ingram. I buy and sell properties throughout the county. I understand you own the house on Maple Street where Daniel currently lives." "We do," Margaret said slowly. "We've been thinking about selling it, actually. Robert's retirement means we need to downsize, and that house is too big for Daniel anyway. I'd like to make you an offer, a very generous offer. Cash, no financing contingencies, quick close." Robert crossed his arms. "What's the catch?" "No catch, but I think you should know exactly who your son has been entertaining in your house." I opened the folder and handed them a photograph. Saddie and Daniel kissing in the parking lot of the Marriott downtown, timestamp clearly visible. Margaret gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Daniel said she was divorced. She's not. We've been married for 8 years. These photos were taken last Tuesday afternoon." I showed them more pictures, hotel receipts, copies of text messages. "I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but I thought you deserved to know what's been happening in your home." Robert's face had turned red, his jaw clenched tight. "That lying little bastard. Excuse my language, Margaret, but I raised him better than this." "We both did," Margaret said, tears in her eyes. "How could he do such a thing? Destroying a marriage, lying to us about it?" "I'm not telling you this to hurt you," I said gently. "But I wanted you to understand why I'm interested in purchasing your property. Daniel has made it clear he intends to continue this relationship. My wife has made it clear she intends to leave me for him. I'd prefer they do it somewhere else." Robert studied the documents, his expression growing darker with each page. "You said cash offer?" $190,000, 10% above assessed value. We can close within the week." Margaret looked at her husband. "Robert, we can't let them continue using our house for this." "Damn right we can't." Robert handed me back the folder. "Mr. Foster, you seem like a decent man who's been dealt a terrible hand. If you're serious about that offer, we're serious about accepting it." "I'm completely serious. I can have my attorney draw up the paperwork today." "What about Daniel?" Margaret asked. "We can't just throw him out on the street. Legally, as property owners, you can give him 30 days' notice to vacate. After that, it becomes my problem." I paused. Though I suspect, once he realizes the situation, he'll want to leave much sooner than that. Robert extended his hand. "Mr. Foster, you've got yourself a deal, and for what it's worth, I'm sorry about your wife. You deserve better." We shook hands in the church parking lot, sealing the agreement that would change everything. As I drove home, I called Marty. "Jesus, Ben, you work fast. I just got your email an hour ago. The sellers are motivated. Can we close by Friday? If they're willing to sign today and the title search comes back clean, absolutely. This is really happening?" "It's really happening." "And Saddie doesn't know?" "Saddie doesn't know anything yet, but she will." I spent the rest of Sunday preparing. Bank transfers to ensure sufficient funds in my checking account, title insurance applications, property inspection waivers. I didn't need to inspect the house, I just needed to own it. By evening, every document was ready for Marty's review. Saddie came home around 10 p.m., humming under her breath and glowing with the kind of happiness that used to be reserved for me. She kissed my cheek absently, the way you'd pet a dog, and headed straight for the shower. "How was work?" I called after her. "Oh, you know, same old stuff. I'm exhausted." I could smell Daniel's cologne on her clothes. Monday morning, I met the Ingrams at Marty's office. They'd brought their own attorney, a wise precaution, and we spent 2 hours reviewing contracts, signing documents, and transferring funds. By noon, I held the deed to 247 Maple Street. "The eviction notice will be served tomorrow," Marty explained. 30 days from receipt, Daniel has to be out." "What if he contests it?" Margaret asked. "He can try, but he has no legal standing. The house belongs to Ben now, and Daniel has no lease agreement or tenant rights. He's essentially been living there as a guest of the previous owners." Robert smiled grimly. "A guest who's overstayed his welcome." That evening I sat in my home office, holding the deed and thinking about timing. Saddie was at another work dinner, probably celebrating Daniel's housewarming party success, completely unaware that the house in question now belonged to her husband. I could serve the eviction notice through the sheriff's department, clean and legal. But where was the poetry in that? Where was the dramatic revelation that would make this moment truly memorable? No, this called for a personal touch. I picked up my phone and called Victor Reeves, a handyman who'd worked on several of my properties. Big guy, former Marine, absolutely loyal and discreet. "Victor, it's Ben Foster. I need a favor. How do you feel about changing some locks tomorrow night?" "Whose locks we changing, boss?" "Mine. I just bought a new property, and I want to make sure the previous tenant gets the message that it's time to move on." Victor chuckled. "I'll bring my tools." Tuesday crawled by like a wounded animal. Saddie left for work in the morning with a kiss and a smile, mentioning she might be late again. I spent the day reviewing my plan, checking and rechecking every detail. By evening, everything was in place. At 8 p.m., I drove to Maple Street and parked across from Daniel's house, my house now. The lights were on, and I could see movement through the windows. Saddie's red Honda sat in the driveway next to Daniel's BMW, exactly where I'd expected it to be. I walked up to the front door, envelope in hand, and knocked. Daniel answered, casual in expensive jeans and a polo shirt, wine glass in his hand. His smile faded when he saw me. "Ben, what are you doing here?" "Hello, Daniel. Is Saddie here? I have something for both of you." "Look, man, I think we should talk about this like adults." "Oh, we're going to." "Saddie," I called past him into the house. "Could you come here for a moment?" She appeared in the hallway, face flushed from wine and laughter, looking beautiful and guilty and completely unprepared for what was about to happen. "Ben, what are you doing here?" "I brought you both a housewarming gift." I held up the envelope. "May I come in? This really should be done properly." Daniel stepped aside reluctantly, and I entered the living room I now legally owned. Saddie followed, wrapping her arms around herself defensively. "This is awkward," Daniel said, trying to maintain his salesman charm. "Maybe we should all sit down and—" "No need." I opened the envelope and pulled out the first document. "Daniel, this is for you. Official notice of eviction. You have 30 days to vacate the premises." He stared at the paper like it was written in a foreign language. "What are you talking about? This is my house." "Actually, it's not. It's mine. I bought it from your parents yesterday. Cash deal, quick close, all very legal and binding." I showed him the deed. "Your parents were quite motivated to sell once they learned what you'd been doing here." The color drained from Daniel's face. "You can't be serious." "Oh, but I am. You see, Daniel, your parents still held the deed to this property. You were essentially renting from them, though I understand no money actually changed hands. Generous of them, really, considering what you've been up to." Saddie had gone completely still. "Ben, what are you saying?" I turned to her and pulled out the second set of documents. "These are for you, sweetheart. Divorce papers, irreconcilable differences, adultery, the whole package. You're officially served." The wine glass slipped from Daniel's hand and shattered on the hardwood floor. Saddie stared at the papers like they might burst into flames. "You can't do this," she whispered. "I already did. You see, I warned you, Saddie. Step foot in Daniel's house and we're done. You stepped, so now we're done." Daniel found his voice. "This is insane. You can't just buy someone's house out from under them." "I can, when they don't actually own it. Your parents were very understanding once I explained the situation. Turns out they raised you to respect marriage and family values, even if you forgot those lessons somewhere along the way." I looked around the living room, mentally cataloging the changes I'd make once it was empty. 30 days, Daniel. After that, anything left behind becomes my property. Saddie was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "Ben, please, can't we talk about this?" "We did talk about it, 3 months ago. I gave you a choice, and you made it. Now you get to live with the consequences." I headed for the door, then paused. "Oh, and Daniel? You might want to call your parents. I think they have some things they'd like to discuss with you." I left them standing in the wreckage of their perfect evening, holding legal documents that would change both their lives forever. As I drove home, I allowed myself a small smile. Step 1, complete. Now for the fun part. The next morning brought the first of many angry phone calls. Saddie started at 6 a.m., her voice shrill with panic and rage. "Ben, you have to stop this. You can't throw Daniel out of his own house." "It's not his house, Saddie. It's mine. I have the deed to prove it. This is crazy. You're acting like a psychopath." I poured my coffee calmly, watching through the kitchen window as my neighbor walked his dog. Normal people living normal lives, honoring their commitments and keeping their promises. "I'm acting like a man who meant what he said. You chose Daniel over our marriage. Now you get to figure out where you're going to live together, because it won't be in my house or in his." "Where am I supposed to go? All my stuff is here." "You can collect your personal belongings this weekend. I'll have Victor here to supervise. Make sure you only take what belongs to you." She hung up on me. 20 minutes later, Daniel called. "Ben, look, I know you're angry, but we can work this out like reasonable men." "Can we? What did you have in mind, Daniel?" "Well, obviously, Saddie and I never meant for things to go this far. It just happened, you know? Sometimes people fall in love and—" "Stop right there." My voice went cold. "You didn't fall in love. You had an affair with a married woman in a house that didn't belong to you. There's nothing romantic about it." "Okay, fine. But throwing me out won't solve anything. Saddie's still going to leave you." "Probably. But she won't be doing it in comfort, will she?" "Tell me, Daniel, where exactly are you planning to live? Your credit's shot from your last divorce, you lease that BMW you drive, and your parents aren't speaking to you. So where does that leave you?" Silence on the other end of the line. "That's what I thought. 30 days, Daniel. Find somewhere else to play house." I hung up and called Marty. "How's the paperwork looking?" "Solid as a rock. Daniel has no legal recourse, and Saddie's divorce papers are properly served. She'll have to respond within 30 days, or you can proceed with a default judgment." "Good. What about the house?" "It's yours, free and clear. You can do whatever you want with it." What I wanted was to watch Daniel Ingram's carefully constructed image crumble in public. By Wednesday, word had spread through our small town's gossip network. Daniel's colleagues at the BMW dealership were whispering about the salesman who'd lost his house to a cuckolded husband. Saddie's pharmaceutical sales friends were buzzing about the affair that had blown up so spectacularly. I decided it was time to add fuel to the fire. Thursday afternoon, I drove to the BMW dealership where Daniel worked. The showroom was sleek and modern, full of expensive cars that projected success and sophistication. Daniel was with a customer, a well-dressed couple looking at a luxury sedan. I walked up to them with a friendly smile. "Excuse me, folks. I couldn't help but notice you're working with Daniel here. Great choice. Daniel's quite the expert on luxury living, aren't you, Daniel?" Daniel's face went pale. Ben, this isn't the time or place? Oh, I think it's the perfect time. See, Daniel here just lost his house to me in a real estate deal. Amazing what happens when you don't actually read the fine print on property ownership, right, Daniel? The customers looked confused. The woman whispered something to her husband. Ben, please, Daniel said through gritted teeth. These are potential buyers. We're potential buyers. I think they're leaving now. I turned to the couple. You might want to work with someone who actually owns the house he's living in. Just a thought. They hurried away, and Daniel's manager appeared from across the showroom. Daniel, is there a problem here? No problem at all, I said cheerfully. Just congratulating Daniel on his new living situation. Apartment hunting can be so stressful, can't it, Daniel? Daniel's hands were clenched into fists. You bastard! Now. Let's keep this professional. After all, you work in customer service. His manager looked between us, clearly sensing drama, but not understanding the details. Daniel, perhaps you should take your break now. Great idea, I agreed. Daniel and I have so much to catch up on. We walked outside to the parking lot, Daniel's face red with humiliation and rage. You're enjoying this, aren't you? He snarled. I'm enjoying justice. You destroyed my marriage, Daniel. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences? Saddie was unhappy. She came to me, not the other way around. And you could have told her to work on her marriage instead of working on getting her into bed. But that wouldn't have been as much fun, would it? He took a swing at me then, a wild haymaker that telegraphed itself from 3 feet away. I stepped aside easily, and his momentum carried him into the side of a pristine white BMW. The car alarm shrieked to life, and half the dealership staff came running to see what was happening. Daniel scrambled to his feet, face burning with embarrassment as his colleagues stared. I straightened my jacket and smiled. Careful there, Daniel. Wouldn't want to damage the merchandise. Though I suppose you're used to breaking things that don't belong to you. I walked away, leaving him standing in the parking lot, surrounded by curious co-workers and the wailing car alarm. In my rearview mirror, I saw his manager pulling him aside for what looked like a very serious conversation. That evening, Saddie showed up at our house, my house now, since she'd made her choice clear. I watched through the security camera as she tried her key, then pounded on the door when it didn't work. Ben, open this door. I live here. I activated the intercom system. Not anymore. Your belongings will be packed and ready for pickup this weekend. You change the locks? That's illegal. This is my house too. Check the divorce papers, Saddie. I'm claiming the house as separate property, purchased before our marriage with my individual funds. You have no legal claim to it. I'm calling the police. Go ahead. They'll tell you the same thing my attorney already told me. You abandoned the marital home to live with your lover. You have no right to re-enter without permission. She screamed in frustration and kicked the door, then stormed back to her car. I watched her drive away, probably heading to Daniel's house to cry on his shoulder and plan their next move. Except Daniel was having problems of his own. Friday morning brought news that Daniel had been suspended from his job pending an investigation into his unprofessional conduct with customers. Apparently, several people had complained about the domestic drama affecting their car buying experience. By Friday afternoon, Daniel's parents had driven over from their retirement community to collect family heirlooms from the house before I took possession. Margaret Ingram knocked on my door with tears in her eyes. Mr. Foster, I wanted to apologize again for what Daniel did. We raised him better than this. You don't owe me any apologies, Mrs. Ingram. You're good people who got caught up in your son's bad choices. We've cut off his credit cards and his car insurance. The BMW will be repossessed within the week. Sometimes tough love is the only kind that works. I helped them load their car with photo albums, antique furniture, and family china. Robert shook my hand as they prepared to leave. That house has been in our family for 20 years, he said. I'm glad it's going to someone who understands the value of commitment and integrity. I'll take good care of it, Mr. Ingram. I know you will. And Ben? I hope you find someone who deserves you. Saddie Foster is a fool. As they drove away, I felt a moment of genuine sadness for them. Good people shouldn't have to suffer for their children's mistakes. But Daniel had made his choices, and now everyone was living with the consequences. That evening, I sat in my home office, reviewing the final paperwork. The house on Maple Street was officially mine. Daniel had 15 days left to vacate. Saddie had 25 days to respond to the divorce papers. Everything was proceeding exactly according to plan. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over." I typed back, "Yes, it is. You just haven't accepted it yet." But I was wrong. Daniel had one more move to make, and it would force me to show him exactly how dangerous it was to underestimate a man with nothing left to lose. Daniel's last desperate play came on a Tuesday night, exactly 2 weeks before his eviction deadline. I was working late in my home office when the security system alerted me to movement at the Maple Street house. The cameras I'd installed showed 2 figures trying to force open the back door, Daniel and Saddie, both dressed in dark clothes, moving with the clumsy stealth of amateurs. I called Victor. "They're trying to break into the house. How fast can you get there?" 10 minutes. You want me to call the cops?" "Not yet. Let's see what they're up to first." I drove to Maple Street and parked down the block, watching through my phone app as Daniel and Saddie searched the house with flashlights. They were looking for something, probably documents or valuables Daniel thought he could use as leverage. What they found instead was me, sitting in the living room with the lights off, waiting. "Looking for something?" I asked, switching on a table lamp. Saddie screamed and dropped her flashlight. Daniel spun around, his face a mask of guilty panic. "Jesus Christ, Ben, you scared the hell out of us." "You're breaking into my house, Daniel. I should have scared you. The question is, what exactly are you looking for?" Saddie had recovered from her initial shock and now stood defiantly beside her lover. "Daniel has a right to his personal belongings." Daniel's personal belongings are in boxes by the front door, clearly labeled and ready for pickup. This looked more like a search party to me. Daniel straightened his shoulders, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "Fine. You want to know what we're looking for? Proof." "Proof of what?" "That you manipulated my parents into selling this house, that you coerced them with threats or blackmail, that this whole thing is illegal." I laughed, genuinely amused. "Daniel, I showed your parents photographs of you and my wife committing adultery. I didn't manipulate anything. I simply told them the truth." "You invaded our privacy. Those photos were taken without consent." "In public places, which makes them perfectly legal. Your adultery, on the other hand, gives me grounds for an at-fault divorce that could cost Saddie significant money in the settlement." Saddie's face went white. "What do you mean?" "I mean that in this state, adultery affects property division and spousal support. Instead of splitting everything 50-50, the faithful spouse can claim a larger share of marital assets. The unfaithful spouse can be denied alimony entirely." Daniel grabbed Saddie's hand. "He's lying. He's just trying to scare you." "Am I?" "Saddie, you might want to consult with your own attorney. I think you'll find that your affair is going to be very expensive." The sound of footsteps on the front porch interrupted our conversation. Victor appeared in the doorway, all 6'4" and 240 pounds of him, carrying a toolbox that looked more like a weapon in his massive hands. "Evening, boss. These folks giving you trouble?" "Just a misunderstanding, Victor. Daniel and Saddie were just leaving." Daniel looked between Victor and me, calculating his odds. Apparently, he didn't like the math. "This isn't over, Ben. You can't destroy people's lives and expect no consequences." "I didn't destroy anything, Daniel. You did that all by yourself when you decided to sleep with another man's wife. I'm just cleaning up the mess." They left through the front door, Daniel's bravado crumbling with each step. I watched them drive away in Saddie's Honda. Daniel's BMW had been repossessed 3 days earlier, just as his mother had predicted. Want me to change the locks again? Victor asked. No, I've got a better idea. How do you feel about a little renovation work? The next morning, I called a contractor and ordered a complete security system upgrade for the Maple Street house. Motion sensors, window alarms, exterior cameras with night vision, and a direct connection to the police department. If Daniel wanted to play games, I'd make sure he understood the rules. But Daniel wasn't done yet. Thursday afternoon, I received a call from Marty. Ben, we might have a problem. Daniel's hired an attorney. What kind of problem? He's claiming you defrauded his parents in the sale, says you used coercion and emotional manipulation to force them into selling below market value. That's ridiculous. I paid 10% above assessed value. I know, but he's also claiming the photos you showed them were obtained illegally. Invasion of privacy, stalking, harassment. He's throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. I sat down heavily in my desk chair. Can he make it stick? Probably not, but he can make things expensive and complicated. Legal challenges, depositions, court hearings. It could drag on for months. Let him try. I've got documentation for everything, and his parents will testify that I was honest and straightforward in all my dealings with them. There's something else, Ben. Daniel's attorney is also representing Saddie in the divorce. They're coordinating their strategies. That was interesting. And expensive. Daniel was broke, his parents had cut him off, and Saddie's pharmaceutical sales job paid well but not well enough to fund a prolonged legal battle. Someone else was backing their play. I spent the afternoon making phone calls and discovered the answer. Daniel's ex-wife, Bree, was funding their legal challenge. Apparently, she was still bitter about their divorce and saw an opportunity to cause Daniel maximum pain by helping him fight a battle he couldn't win. She was willing to spend money just to watch him suffer through a prolonged legal process. Twisted, but I could work with twisted. Friday evening, I drove to the upscale bar where Bree reportedly spent her evenings, a trendy place called The Parlor that catered to divorced professionals with money to burn. I found her at the bar exactly as described, attractive, expensively dressed, and radiating the kind of bitter sophistication that came from a messy divorce. Bree Ingram? She turned, sized me up with predatory eyes. Depends who's asking. Ben Foster. I believe you know my wife Saddie. Her smile was sharp as a knife. Ah, the cuckolded husband. I've heard so much about you. I'm sure you have. Mind if I buy you a drink? I think we might have some common interests. She gestured to the empty bar stool beside her. I'm listening. I ordered 2 glasses of the most expensive whiskey they had and got straight to the point. I understand you're funding Daniel's legal challenge to my property purchase. I might be. Daniel's always been an idiot, but he's my idiot. Can't have people taking advantage of him. Even when he's sleeping with another man's wife? Especially then. Daniel's cheating destroyed our marriage, so watching him destroy someone else's gives me a certain satisfaction. Call it justice. I sipped my whiskey, studying her face. What if I told you there was a way to hurt Daniel much worse than a legal battle he's going to lose anyway? I'd say you have my attention. Daniel's broke, unemployed, and about to be homeless, but he still has his pride, his image, his belief that he's God's gift to women. So what if we took that away too? I spent the next hour explaining my plan. By the time I finished, Bree was smiling with genuine delight. You're absolutely diabolical, she said. I love it. Then you'll withdraw your funding for his legal challenge? Consider it done. This is going to be much more entertaining than watching lawyers argue. We shook hands, 2 scorned spouses united in a common cause. Daniel had made enemies of the wrong people, and now he was going to learn exactly how expensive that mistake could be. Monday morning, Daniel's attorney called Marty to withdraw the legal challenge. Apparently, his funding had dried up unexpectedly. By Tuesday, Saddie's attorney had also withdrawn, leaving her to represent herself in the divorce proceedings. The house on Maple Street was officially mine, free and clear. Daniel had 1 week left to vacate. It was time for the final act. The eviction was scheduled for Friday at noon. I arrived at the Maple Street house at 11:30, accompanied by Victor, a sheriff's deputy, and a moving truck I'd hired to haul away anything Daniel left behind. Daniel's Honda, Saddie's car, since his BMW was gone, sat in the driveway. Through the windows I could see boxes stacked haphazardly, evidence of a hasty packing job by people who'd run out of time and options. At exactly noon, I knocked on the door of my own house. Daniel answered, looking like he'd aged 5 years in the past month. His expensive clothes were wrinkled, his usually perfect hair was messy, and his confident salesman's smile had been replaced by the hollow expression of a man who'd lost everything. "Time's up, Daniel. I need another week. Saddie's trying to find us an apartment, but the deposits are more than we expected, and with my job situation..." "Not my problem. You had 30 days. The sheriff is here to ensure you leave peacefully." Saddie appeared behind him, her face streaked with tears and mascara. "Ben, please, can't you show some compassion? We have nowhere to go." "You should have thought of that before you decided to destroy our marriage. Deputy, would you please escort them from the premises?" The sheriff's deputy, a professional woman in her 40s, stepped forward with official paperwork. "Ma'am, sir, you're being lawfully evicted from this property. You need to gather your personal belongings and leave immediately." "This is insane," Saddie shouted. "Ben, you can't just throw people out on the street." "I'm not throwing you out on the street, Saddie. I'm reclaiming my property from trespassers. There's a difference." Daniel tried one last appeal to masculine solidarity. "Ben, man to man, surely we can work something out. I know I made mistakes, but man to man?" I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a whisper only he could hear. "A man doesn't sleep with another man's wife. A man doesn't lie to his parents and use their house for adultery. A man takes responsibility for his actions instead of making excuses. You're not a man, Daniel. You're a parasite." His face flushed red, but with the deputy watching, he couldn't do anything but swallow his rage. It took them 2 hours to load their belongings into Saddie's Honda and a small U-Haul trailer. I watched from the front porch, occasionally directing the moving crew to collect items they'd left behind. Victor had installed new locks that morning, and I held the only keys to the house that had been Daniel's childhood home and was now mine. As they prepared to leave, Saddie made one final attempt to salvage something from the wreckage. "Ben, I know you hate me right now, but we were happy once. Doesn't that count for anything? We were happy when you honored your marriage vows. The moment you broke them, that happiness became a lie. I never meant for it to happen this way." "Yes, you did. Every choice you made led to this moment. The hotel rooms, the lies, the secret phone calls. You chose this outcome, Saddie. Now you get to live with it." Daniel started the Honda, trailer swaying behind them as they pulled out of the driveway. I watched them disappear around the corner, two people who'd gambled everything on lust and lost it all to consequences they'd never bothered to consider. The deputy completed her paperwork and left. Victor finished installing the new security system. The moving crew hauled away the last of Daniel's abandoned possessions. By evening, the house was empty and quiet, ready for the renovations I'd already planned. New paint, updated appliances, modern fixtures. Within 6 months, it would be unrecognizable as the place where Daniel Ingram had once lived. I stood in the living room where I'd confronted them that first night, remembering the shock on their faces when they realized their perfect plan had collapsed. Saddie had thought she could have her affair and her comfortable marriage too. Daniel had thought he could steal another man's wife without paying a price. Both had been wrong. My phone buzzed with a text from Bree. "Saw them at the Budget Inn on Highway 9. Daniel's working the night shift at a gas station. Thought you'd want to know." I typed back, "Thanks for the update." The Budget Inn was where people stayed when they'd run out of better options. $50 a night for a room that smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. Daniel Ingram, who'd once sold luxury cars and lived in his family's beautiful house, was now pumping gas for minimum wage and sleeping in a roadside motel. Justice had a poetic sense of humor. 6 months later, the renovated house on Maple Street sold for $260,000, giving me a $70,000 profit on my investment. I used the money to buy 2 more properties, continuing the cycle of improvement and growth that had served me well throughout my career. The divorce was finalized without contest. Saddie couldn't afford to fight it, and Daniel's legal troubles had multiplied when his ex-wife, Bree, decided to audit his finances during their marriage. Apparently, he'd been hiding assets and income for years, which interested both the IRS and the state tax authority. Saddie kept her job, but lost everything else. No house, no savings, no husband, and no Daniel. He'd blamed her for their mutual downfall and moved to another state to escape his creditors. She sent me a letter once, apologizing and asking for a second chance. I returned it unopened. I never saw Daniel again, but I heard through the local gossip network that he'd found work as a used car salesman in Florida, living in a studio apartment and driving a 15-year-old Toyota. His parents had disowned him completely, leaving their estate to charity rather than risk him inheriting anything he could squander. As for me, I kept working, kept investing, kept building the life I'd always wanted. A year after the divorce, I met Jennifer, a real estate attorney who appreciated both my business acumen and my commitment to keeping promises. We married 2 years later in a ceremony attended by friends who understood the value of loyalty and integrity. We bought a house together, a fixer-upper naturally, and spent our weekends renovating it into something beautiful and lasting. Jennifer understood that I'd been betrayed before, and she made sure I never doubted her commitment to our marriage. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. But with the right person and enough time, it's possible to create something even stronger than what came before. Sometimes I drive past the house on Maple Street, now owned by a young family with 2 children and a golden retriever. They've painted it yellow and planted flowers in the front yard, transforming it into the kind of home Daniel never could have provided. The new owners don't know the house's recent history, and they don't need to. All that matters is that it's sheltering people who understand the value of commitment and family. Saddie works for a different pharmaceutical company now, in a different city, living alone in a small apartment and dating occasionally, but never seriously. She learned too late that some mistakes can't be undone, some trust can't be rebuilt, and some consequences last forever. Daniel's name never comes up in conversation anymore. He's become what he always was underneath the expensive clothes and flashy smile. Nobody important, forgotten by everyone who once knew him. I kept my promise, the one I'd made that morning in my kitchen while watching steam rise from my coffee cup. Step foot in Daniel's house and we're done. She stepped. We were done. And I made sure they both understood exactly what that meant. The boundary line had been crossed, and I'd redrawn the map entirely.